Coming in at number 10, it would be kept secret for a while. When Kim Jong-un's father Kim Jong-il passed away in December 2011, it took the state media 51 hours to report it. They kept the death a secret as a result of political jockeying. This was while the funeral committee and successor were decided. I would imagine the death of Kim Jong-un would be similar. When the new leaders were ready to announce the death, they would inform government agencies, work units, school workers, and military leaders that there is to be a major announcement. Then, like with Kim Jong-il's death, the announcement would eventually come from the state-run Korean Central Television. The news anchor would be dressed in black traditional Korean clothing to mark the morning. This leads us to number 9. The nation would weep dramatically. As we saw in 2011, North Koreans absolutely lost it over the death of their leader. In the dictator state, the leader of the country is seen with almost a godlike status. When the previous leader died, people wept in the streets for weeks, which I imagine would be the same if Kim Jong-un died. A lot of people simply fell to their knees in grief and lamentation. If you were visiting North Korea, the streets of Pyongyang would be loud with wailing. Coming in at number 8, there would be a huge state funeral. Like with Kim Jong-il, there would be a huge state funeral. It's likely that Kim's body would lie in state, as is traditional, in the Kusan Memorial Palace for a week. A week to 10 days after his death, the funeral, or the ceremony of his parting, as it would be called in North Korea, would take place. People would line the streets in mourning, there'd be a procession followed by an artillery salute. This would then be followed by 3 minutes of silence. Clues to the next successor would likely be evident in the funeral party. When his father died, Kim Jong-un was ranked the first in the funeral committee of 233 people. Coming in at number 7, South Korea would be on high alert. Like with the death of Kim Jong-il, the South Korean military would be put on high alert. It is likely that the president of South Korea would cancel what they were doing and focus on the situation. There would be a paramount interest in keeping the Korean peninsula stable. Coming into number 6, the event would make huge international headlines and would be the subject of much debate. Kim Jong-un's death would make international headlines, there's no doubt about it. While the passing of any world leader is big news, because of the nature of North Korea and the cult of personality surrounding Kim Jong-un, this would be an especially big deal. International politicians would be keeping a very close eye on the situation for fear of upheaval destabilizing the country. While it's likely that China would send its condolences, a lot of countries would not have kind words to say about Kim Jong-un. Coming into number 5, there is the possibility of nuclear attacks. Whilst this is not a given by any means, we do know that Kim Jong-un has spent a lot of time and energy cultivating nuclear weapons. We know that the leader of the Hermit Nation has been pretty paranoid and has regularly threatened the West with his arsenal. Who is to say that his dying wish isn't to launch what he already has? He could launch nukes at whoever he could reach. Now this could mean South Korea, Japan, Guam, but of course who is to know what kind of range he is working on? Perhaps come his death he could reach the United States, parts of Europe and Australia. Coming into number 4, it could possibly mean the end of the Kim dynasty. Again, we're not sure about this one. Certainly as it is now, there is no obvious successor to the leader of North Korea. He is widely speculated to have killed his own brother during an attack at Kuala Lumpur airport, and of course this isn't his only family member to have met a suspicious end. If Kim wanted to maintain the dynasty his grandfather started, he would need to make it clear who he wanted his successor to be. Now right now his children are so young so they wouldn't be suitable replacements, but of course despite health concerns Kim Jong-un is still young himself, so perhaps by the time he does die one of them would be ready to take his place. If he passed away now though, it is likely there would be a lot of political jockeying and perhaps some more deaths. Coming into number 3, there could be collective rule. When Mao and Stalin died, China and Russia opted for collective rule, which was actually better for their countries as it toned down the megalomania a touch. It is possible that members of Kim Jong-un's government could make an arrangement to appoint a ruler and then start their own line of succession. If a successor couldn't be decided on though, our number 2 could indeed happen. That's right, coming in at number 2, North Korea could collapse. Without Kim Jong-un at the helm, North Korea could feasibly eventually collapse. If political order wasn't restored quickly, the country could be plunged into a civil war. We have no real idea of knowing exactly how a lot of North Koreans feel about the country and the regime they live within. A lot of people may well be discontent. I can only assume that if people were looking to deflect, this would probably be their chance. Again, if political order couldn't be restored, then other nations may step in, which leads me to number 1. Finally, perhaps the best outcome from Kim Jong-un's death is that Korea could be united. There have been failed attempts at reunification in the past, although the two different nations have developed very different cultures. A unified Korea did march in the Winter Olympics in 2018, so perhaps it's possible. Politically, this is something that South Korea seemed to want, although it would bring up a lot of tensions between the United States, the EU, China and Russia, who would all be grappling for influence in the area. Coming in at number 10, Charles will become king. The throne is never left unattended. In the event of the Queen's death, Charles will automatically become the king. He will be proclaimed King Charles III the day after his mother's death in a ceremony at St James's Palace. He will swear to protect the church, and then he will head off on an immediate tour of the UK, visiting Edinburgh, Cardiff and Belfast. He will then meet with the leaders of the devolved governments. As Charles is sworn in, the UK will now know a new queen, Queen Camilla, his wife. There are likely to be mixed emotions about this. Coming in at number 9, the Prime Minister and the Commonwealth will be informed. Immediately after the Queen's death, the Prime Minister of the UK will be informed. She or he will then inform the 15 governments outside of the UK where the Queen is head of state. Then the 36 other Commonwealth nations for which the Queen is a figurehead will be informed. Commonwealth countries include Australia, Canada and New Zealand. Coming in at number 8, the news will go out to the public. The Queen's death will undoubtedly make global headlines. News is likely to spread pretty fast and will officially come in 2 forms. The royal family's official press, Clarence House, will provide a press release to all news sources. Traditionally, the BBC is the first to hear, although it's unlikely that they will receive such a benefit in modern times. Meanwhile, at Buckingham Palace, a footman dressed in black will put up a black-edged notice on the palace gates. The royal family website will be turned black, and news reporters will also wear black on camera. Of course, all news publications in existence will have their Queen eulogy on file and will have practiced for this exact scenario. It's just good journalism. Radios will change their regular programming, broadcasting services and more frequent news updates. The BBC, the UK's public broadcaster, will not run any comedy on their main channel, and they will change their scheduling to accommodate breaking news. BBC radios will play only appropriate music and news will be read every 15 minutes. Coming in at number 7, we have Parliament will be recalled immediately following the death. That's right, immediately following the death of a monarch, Parliament will be recalled, so this is both the House of Lords and the House of Commons. If the Parliament is on recess, MPs will be expected to make their way back to London. If the Prime Minister is not in London, they will also be expected to return as a matter of urgency. It's likely that parliaments in other Commonwealth countries will meet too. Coming in at number 6, there will be 12 days of national mourning in the UK. The Queen's death will trigger 12 days of mourning in the UK, as well as other likely mourning periods in Commonwealth countries. On the day of her death, flags will fly at half-mast and a lot of businesses will send their employees home. The royal parks will ban all games and some international and national sports may be called off. For those that aren't, the national anthem will be sung at each match. The Queen's funeral will take place 9 days after her death, and in the mourning period, outpourings of tributes are likely to be made. The stock market will be closed on the day of the funeral and perhaps for more days in the mourning period. Her funeral will be a national holiday in the UK and may also be a holiday in other Commonwealth countries. So this brings us to the funeral itself, coming in at number 5. If the Queen dies abroad or elsewhere in the UK, there are transportation plans in place. Ultimately, she will be taken first to Buckingham Palace, then she'll be taken to Westminster Hall where she will lie in state until her funeral. As she lays in state, the public will be able to pay their respects with huge footfall expected. The funeral will take place at 11 AM at Westminster Abbey with around 2,000 invited guests inside. This will include officials from across the world. Her body will be taken to Windsor Palace later that day. As her coffin travels by road, a lot of people are expected to turn out to watch it go by. Next up at number 4, she will be buried in a vault at Windsor Castle. The royal household will travel ahead to Windsor Castle and they will have a private ceremony as the Queen's body is descended into the royal vault. Coming in at number 3, money would change. Somewhere along the 10-day timeline of events surrounding the Queen's death, the order for new money to be issued will come in the UK and all Commonwealth countries that use the British monarch on their cash. Eventually, coins and notes with the Queen's face will be replaced with that of King Charles III. Now, this next point is pure speculation, but a lot of people are suggesting it could happen. If it did, it would be the most dramatic event. That's right, coming in at number 2, we have the possible breakup of the Commonwealth. Australia's Prime Minister and opposition leader both want the country to be a republic. If Australia did become a republic, it is possible that New Zealand, Canada, Bermuda and Barbados and the rest of the Commonwealth countries may wish to follow suit. It's also quite likely soon after that Charles will tour the Commonwealth to try and consolidate his position. Finally, coming in at number 1, we would have a period of reflection. After her death, there will come a moment of national and international reflection. Queen Elizabeth II has seen much change over her reign, and sadly, not all of it has been good. From a country with an empire to none at all. From a country number 1 on the global stage to one of decline in national power. Britain's position is not the same as it once was. The Queen has lived through a lot, and I hope that her reign continues to see international peace and that she doesn't have to witness the breakup of the United Kingdom. Whatever anyone's thoughts on the Queen, she's been a strong woman and a unifying force for a country that finds itself less unified by the day. Coming in at number 10, we have the Trump Organization will be passed on to a new owner. Donald Trump ran the Trump Organization from 1971 to 2017. Prior to his presidency, he was first and foremost known for his business holdings. When he became president, he delegated power to his 2 oldest sons, Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump. He also gave power to his longtime CFO, Alan Weisselberg. If Donald Trump died during his presidency, the company is currently set up to run without him. However, he is still the business owner. If Trump died sometime after his presidency finished, then there may need to be some restructuring. Whatever happens, the company is likely to be kept in the family and taken over by his sons and their children thereafter. Coming in at number 9, the will would need to be organized. Alongside the Trump Organization, which includes hotels, skate rinks, golf courses, and a winery, Donald Trump is the owner of many saleable assets. His net worth is an estimated $3.1 billion as of February 2018. Now, this makes him one of the richest businessmen alive. As and when Donald Trump dies, those named in his will, so presumably his children and his wife, are set to inherit a fortune. So next we're going to talk about a few things that would happen if he died in office, which hopefully won't happen because that would be very disruptive for the United States. Coming into number 8, we have a theoretical post-assassination scenario. If the president was assassinated after officially being declared dead, his body would be flown in Air Force One to Washington for an official autopsy. This caused chaos during President Kennedy's death because at the time, Texas state law demanded that the autopsy be performed in the state of death. Meanwhile, if the perpetrator wasn't captured, there would be a nationwide manhunt as they were brought to justice. As a result of assassination, Trump would become the 5th sitting president to be murdered while in office, which really isn't a title that anybody wants. If Trump was assassinated, at number 7, government officials would be transferred to high security facilities for the time being. As chaos ensued, senior government officials, so basically the leader of Congress, the Supreme Court, and the cabinet, would be transported to local secure government facilities. Vice President Mike Pence would be moved to a secret location where he would be able to make his next steps, which brings me to the next point. If Trump died whilst in office, number 6 would need to happen immediately, and that is a new president would be sworn in. Mike Pence would immediately be called on to take up the presidency, as is customary when presidents in office die. When JFK was assassinated, Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in just 2 hours and 8 minutes after the death of the 35th president. Again, regardless of whether or not President Trump was assassinated if he died in office, number 5 would happen. That is, the United States would observe national mourning. Flags would be flown at half-mast around the country, and beyond that, United States flags would be flown at half-mast wherever they were flown in the world. In the 1800s, the White House was draped in black fabric to mark the death of President Garfield. While this hasn't happened in a long time, it would not be beyond the realm of possibility. The scale of our next point would totally depend on the circumstances surrounding the death of Donald Trump and whether or not he was in office, or indeed how soon after his presidency ended that he died. But at number 4, we have the news would make international headlines. If the president was assassinated in the modern day, it would cause an absolute internet meltdown. All news outlets and social media users would be rushing to share the news. An American presidential death is among one of the most dramatic and politically impactful events that can happen, so all news sources would cover the events for days. If Trump died outside of office, it would still make headlines, but the story may not be, for want of a better journalistic term, as juicy. Trump is already in his 70s, so his death is statistically likely to come within the next 1 or 2 decades, which is recent enough to make his presidency memorable in people's minds when he passes on. It also will be really interesting to see how different news outlets report on his death. Next up, regardless of how or when Trump dies, it is likely that he will be buried. Coming in at number 3, we have details of a state funeral. All former presidents, the current president and the president-elect are entitled to a state funeral if they so wish, but it is up to the discretion of the family of the deceased. Knowing that President Trump enjoys a bit of fanfare, I can only assume that he would decide in advance that he would like a full state funeral, in which case he may lay in state at the Capitol Rotunda. His funeral day would likely involve a procession down Pennsylvania Avenue, with a funeral car traveling at no more than 20 miles per hour. The event would likely be televised too, and heads of state from countries around the world would attend. Coming into number 2, we have further details of his burial. Following Donald Trump's funeral, there is the question as to where he would like to be buried. 2 former presidents are buried at Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia, and a further 2 at the Hollywood Cemetery in Virginia. In fact, the majority of former presidents are buried in the state of Virginia, which seems like a weird coincidence. However, it seems that Donald Trump has set his sights on a burial plot near one of his golf courses in New Jersey. Finally, at number 1 of the top 10 things that will happen when Donald Trump dies, he will become a chapter in history. For better or for worse, Donald Trump has played a vital role in history. His significance will only be truly known in hindsight. Trump's death date will be an important date for the history books that American students will learn for decades or more to come.